Karen Clay. Thanks for joining me for another Feldenkrais lesson. This lesson is part of the hip series, Finding the Hip Joint in many ways, and we're going to be working in a lunge position. So let's talk about that a little bit before we start. You are definitely, absolutely going to need some kind of padding. And if it's a soft, squishy pillow, it's not going to help you very much. This is kind of like a gardening pad, a thick piece of foam, or just a hard blanket folded up would do really well. And then if you're someone who can't lunge for some reason, your knees or your back or your hips, you can do the entire lesson with one hip, just one sits bone on a stool and one sits bone off the stool on the knee. And you'll be able to do the entire lesson in this way. So please notice that my other sits bone is not on the stool. I've just got my right side of my pelvis on the stool, so I can do all the movements that we'll be doing with lunge. And even if you're not going to sit on the stool, I still recommend having something nearby just to help you with your balance, because it takes a while to understand how to balance in this position for for much time. So let's please begin in standing and find your feet. And let's begin with the hands on the hips and bend one knee so your left hip shifts to the left and goes towards the ceiling. And then do that again. Bend your right knee so your left hip sticks out and goes towards the ceiling. So you're lowering the right hip and raising the left hip. Now go to the other side. Which side do you travel further to the side, and which side is limited? You can see that we all have differences, right to left differences through our hip joints. So now that you've done that, you just take a brief walk and notice whether you can feel any side to side movement in your pelvis as you walk. It's a part of the natural walking cycle for there to be a little bit of a sashay side to side. All right, so let's begin now. Please start with your right knee down. So you'll put the pad under your right knee, and you can have your stool, basically you can have it just in front of you. And please note that if you have your feet very close together, you are going to be very unstable. So separate yourself a little bit so that you've got a wider stance, bringing your stool close to you. So if you need it, you can have it. Put your hands on your hips and push the right knee into the floor so your left hip goes to the ceiling, and then let go. We just did that in standing. Push it up, let it go. Push it up, let it go. So this is happening in your hip joints, not in your waist. You're not moving your upper body side to side, are you? You're just raising the hip and lowering the hip. Put your hand on your belly button and notice how your weight shifts right to left in the center of you, how all of you is going to the left and all of you is going to the right. And then your hands back on your hips. Come down and switch sides. So you'll switch your pad, you'll switch your stool, you'll put your right foot forward, you'll have a wide enough stance so you can balance, put your hands on your hips, push through the left knee so the right pelvis moves towards the ceiling, and then the left pelvis moves towards the ceiling. So you're teeter-tottering your pelvis right and left, pushing into the ground through the left knee so the right hip lifts, letting go and lowering the right hip so the left hip is taller. So back and forth. Resting on the top of your foot is what I recommend. Balancing on the ball of the foot, you can also try. So I'm saying you can either have your foot behind you tucked on your toes or with your foot long, just to help yourself with balance. So you're going back and forth and back and forth. Good. Please come and take a rest on your back. Give yourself a little bit of a rest. Notice the sensations around your hip joint. So because we're doing this side-to-side movement, which is not so common, we're going to be waking up the muscles on the inner thighs and the muscles on the outer hips, on the right and left side of the pelvis. So let's please come again to our initial position with the right knee down and the left foot forward. Pad under your right knee. Your stool is on your right side. So now this time, would you stick your hip out and find the doorknob bone that's just below your pelvis, about the level of your mid pelvis. That's called the trochanter. It's actually part of your thigh bone. It's where your iliotibial band and all your gluteals attach. And you're going to put your hand just above that bone in the tissue, and as you push the left hip towards the ceiling, feel those muscles engage on the top of the trochanter. They're the muscles that are closing the space between the leg and the pelvis so the other side goes towards the ceiling. So it's a teeter-totter movement, moving right and left. And another way to think about it, if you put both hands on the hips, is that you're spilling the soup out of the right side of the bowl, and then you're spilling the soup out of the left side of the bowl. Right side of the bowl, left side of the bowl. Take it soft and easy, slow and soft. Good. Try it on the other side. Change your stool, change your knees, wide stance, resting on the top of the foot. Hands on the, find the trochanter on the left side. Bring your hands into the muscles on the top of the pelvis so that you can feel those muscles engage as you push your right hip towards the ceiling, pushing the right hip towards the ceiling by closing the space between the pelvis and the leg, closing closing over here and lifting over here. So this joint closes and this hip goes up, and then this joint closes and this hip goes up. So put your hands on your hips and spill the soup out of the right, spill the soup out of the left, and out of the right, and out of the left, and right, and left. Good. Please lie down on your back and take a rest. I'm just going to check the time here. Notice what you notice about your hip joints. And then please roll to your side. Bring yourself up to sitting and then standing. And come back and just walk right away. Notice if you notice anything different in how you feel your hip joints sway a little bit side to side as you walk. Seeing if you can find a little bit of that play in your hip, in your pelvis. Not a lot, but just allowing, the more that everything works, so no one part works harder than any other part, that's what makes our walking regenerative and restorative. So we'll come back next week with the final version of our hip joint series, Finding the Hip Joint in Many Ways. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching.